Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz. And with me, as always, is my esteemed colleague and brother in this endeavor, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing good. Thanks for that introduction.
Um, so for those of you who are listening, you do not know. For those of you who are viewing, you'll see that we have a guest speaker. We have Bridgett McGowan with us today. Bridget, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Great to be here, Dave.
Excellent. Take a couple moments and tell the audience a little bit about your background, and then we'll bring in the topic and we'll start picking your brain a little bit.
Fantastic. I was that kid in elementary school who got talks too much on her report card. Hands down, hands down. Right. So I'm visiting an uncle. I was visiting an uncle in April of 2025, and he didn't know that's what I did for a living, a professional speaker. He didn't know that's what was my career. And so he says, "Oh, yeah, that's because you like to talk a lot, right?" No, Uncle Johnny, there's a lot more to it than that. There's the research, there's the design, there's audience awareness. So I went from talks too much in elementary school to getting paid to talk
Nice.
many years later. And then when I'm not on a stage inspiring people to be better communicators, I am publishing books for Press 49. That's pretty much the long and short of it.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
So you're not busy at all. It sounds like you have plenty of time in the day to do vacations and 10 other projects, right?
100%, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
we need to bottle your energy and start selling it to people.
I said that yesterday about my husband's 11-year-old son. So he's in this football camp and they're out in the Arizona sun for five
Whew.
hours.
Oh,
Okay. They take about
wow.
a 45-minute lunch break and do some film study, right? Go indoors. And more like maybe 4 hours and 15 minutes. We get home, he's bouncing on a trampoline. I text my best friend. I said, listen, if I can figure out how to bottle whatever that is, we're going to be billionaires, girl.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Too funny. All right. So today's topic is breaking the pattern. This is an interesting discussion that Bridget and I had a couple of months ago. So, Bridget, please tell us your thoughts on the topic breaking the pattern.
Absolutely. To break the pattern means you boldly reject the status quo that's been holding you back. Whether it's mindset, a habit, fear, it doesn't matter. Breaking the pattern means you've decided that enough is enough. You look at the cycle that's been on repeat, self-doubt, shrinking yourself in rooms, waiting for permission, and you say, no, not anymore. Breaking the pattern is that moment when you stop rehearsing your limitations and you start living your possibilities. It's when you rewrite the script, okay? You raise your standards. You don't worry about anybody else's standards. You don't worry about what everybody else is doing and then try to emulate them or try to do better. No, no, no. You create and then raise your own standards. And then you walk like you know the mic already belongs to you. You don't wait for change, you become the change.
Wow.
Wow.
I
Go
have
ahead,
one
Joe.
question. That all sounds great, but how do you get to that point? What flips that switch for you to flip the script? I mean, the script. What gets you to that point? How do you get to there?
Well, it requires a combination of awareness, courage, and action. So you don't break the pattern by accident. You have to get there on purpose, Joe.
Right.
Number one, you recognize that there's a pattern, that there's some kind of a loop. So first, you've got to call it out. Is it that voice that tells you I'm not ready? Is it that tendency to overthink until the moment is long past you? The habit of playing it safe when you were built to stand out, okay? You got to recognize there's a loop. And that's when you can fix what the loop is. That's when you can fix it. It's when you face it. And then you've got to admit that uh, that pattern is not working for you. That's number two. Be real with yourself. If the way you have been moving and grooving really isn't grooving, and it hasn't taken you where you want to go, then it is time to stop defending it. Comfort is not the same as progress. Doing the same thing over and over again, it feels safe, but you're destined for so much more. And then three, you've got to decide you're done. Not next week, not when the stars align, right now. You do not need permission. You need a decision. That's the power move. And then you do something different. That's four. That's that fourth step. Whether it's small, a big leap, you just take it. Speak up in that meeting, submit that proposal, walk away from the toxic situation, show up and show out how you want to be remembered. Patterns break when action happens. And then finally, repeat the new pattern. Because one bold move is powerful, but consistency, and it doesn't matter what successful leader in whatever industry you follow or you listen to, you will hear that word consistency hands down. So consistency is how you're going to make that shift stick. Keep showing up, keep choosing differently, and that is how transformation happens.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and it resonates so well with Joe and I when we talk about critical self-reflection and being critically honest with yourself. I mean, I would love to be a basketball star, but there's a problem. I'm too old. I can't shoot a basketball. I can't dribble a basketball, and I'm too short. So I mean, it's you have to be real with yourself, and that I think is one of the toughest things that a person can do is to be brutally honest with themselves and real about their expectations about certain things. I would love to go to the moon. Probably not going to happen.
Yep.
Right. And you really have to look in the mirror, Dave. You have to look in the mirror and not just see the image you want the world to see, but actually see the truth behind your eyes and behind your heart. Are you hiding behind busy work? Are you calling fear preparation? Are you settling and you're calling it gratitude? You see, being real with yourself and being brutally honest means you ask the hard questions and you do not flinch at the answers. Am I showing up the way I say I want to? Am I doing what I know I was made to do? Am I blaming circumstances, other people, other things, when deep down inside, I know I am just scared to move? Ask yourself those real questions. And it's not about beating yourself up. No, no, no. It's about leveling yourself up. Because real talk, it does not keep you stuck. It sets you free, being brutally honest with yourself. Being real means you admit when you're tired of your current situation, and you acknowledge when you're scared. It's okay to be tired of a situation, but then also scared to do something about it. You own when you are playing small, and then you ask yourself, now that I know better, we've heard this before. Now that you know better, you do better. Now that I know better, what am I going to do differently?
Right. Wow. I think that for most of us, I think that being brutally honest with ourselves, I think we might be able to do that, but I think the harder part is actually doing something about it. They actually changing the pattern. They actually taking that tiny step. And me and Dave talk about this a lot. Sometimes all it takes is that one inch movement forward that starts down that line of change, that line of new pattern. And so, yeah, again, you define your own success. So you can also define what it takes to get there. So if it's baby steps or if it's taking long strides, it's still up to you. But I think that's the challenge for most people is to recognize and then act upon it, to actually do something about it. I know I've suffered that in many situations where I want to do something. I know what I should be doing, but I don't. And I honestly own that. I know I've done that in the past. I still do it to this day. So I think that remains a challenge for most of us.
But you don't want to live with that constant loop of what ifs in your
Right.
head.
Right.
You know, what if I had gone to law school? What if I pursued that doctorate degree? What if, and then you
Yeah.
get to a point in life where you've been living life on autopilot. And so when you break the pattern, it means you stop living life on autopilot. You stop repeating the habits that do not serve you, showing up
Right.
small or dimming your light because someone else said you were too much. I delivered a presentation in DC. In May of 2025. And before my presentations start, for people who show up early, I like to give them a bonus, a treat, a thank
Hmm.
you for coming early. And what I'll do is the first 10, 15 minutes before the start of the presentation, I will take questions from the audience based on the topic that I'm speaking on. Someone asked, "What do you do, Bridget, when someone says you're too much?" I said, hold that thought. Just 1 second, right? Just 1 second. And I ran to my bag and I got my shades out. I said, tell them if my light is too bright, borrow these for a minute. Put these on. Yeah,
Right.
breaking the
Right.
pattern means you recognize your brilliance. Okay, you recognize the cycle, the one where you're second guessing yourself. You're thinking that when people tell you you're too much, maybe you really are. Where you stay silent when you should speak up. You say yes when everything in you is screaming no, and you decide this stops with me. It means you give yourself permission to be more than what you were told you could be. You rewrite the narrative. You take control of your narrative. You stop asking for a seat at the table. You start building your own table, the chairs,
Right.
and
Yeah.
everything else that goes with it. We've heard it before. Breaking the pattern is not about one big moment because I think a lot of times people think they've got to have this monumental occurrence. It's about the little choices, the brave ones, the scary ones, the ones that stretch you, that shape you, and shake things up in the best way. And it's walking into a room like you belong because you do. And your body language says, everybody who's watching, I dare you to tell me I don't deserve to be here. It's showing up with power, it's showing up with purpose and presence because the world needs exactly what you bring. Just because somebody else is already doing it, they're not doing it the way you're doing it, boo.
Right. Right.
Two
Right.
finger snaps.
I like what you're saying about the decisions. It's not the big decisions that necessarily are going to do it. And Joe and I've talked about this several times offline. You know, it's typically that one little decision
Yeah.
that becomes a big step for you. And it's an easy decision and it's an easy action. We're just not doing it for some reason. Either we don't see it, we haven't thought of it, we haven't found it, or maybe we're staring at it and not even realizing it, or we're looking at it and we're, to your point, we're afraid to take that step. We're afraid to open that door just a little bit, and see what's on the other side. And it's
But
not that monumental stuff.
that's what just what I was going to say, that we may be looking too big,
Mhm.
and that little step forward is just the moment get us started down that path, get the momentum started, and then we start to move toward that bigger thing. But I think that's part of the thing that we look at. I think sometimes get hung up in. It's got to be this grand thing. It's got to be a huge statement. It's got to, change lives. I mean, we get to that level of thinking it has to be that much of an impact when it really doesn't.
Yeah.
It's
It's
great
like
if it does. It's great if it does change lives,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have to right away. You've got to build that momentum. People won't take the tiny steps because they're convinced. They've convinced themselves that the tiny steps don't count. They think if it's not some grand gesture, if it's not this massive leap or an overnight sensational transformation, then it's not worth doing. But that is a lie. Tiny steps build momentum. We've all read or heard of Atomic Habits by James Clear. Every single person on the planet has a copy of his book on their shelves. And that is all he talks about is the tiny steps build momentum. Tiny steps create consistency. Tiny steps stack up to big wins. So don't feel like the big win has to happen right out of the gate. Take the tiny steps and then you'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah, it's like old radios in the cars or the receivers back in time that had the dial. You know, to get that channel, it's just a fine tune to get it to come in perfectly. You don't need to swing that thing all the way to the other side and go back and forth. It's just a fine tune is usually what's going to make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
So, for people that are stuck, either in making that decision, taking that action, paying attention to what needs to happen, whether they know what it is or whether they don't know what it is, what can you tell them about making that decision and then taking that action and then wash, rinse, and repeat to break that cycle? Whether it could be work related, it could be something at home, it could be any number of things in life, you know. So what kind of thoughts do you have about that to help people get past that little speed bump, if you will?
You move anyway. What you do when fear has you frozen and has you stuck on repeat, you move anyway. Not because the fear disappears, but because your purpose is bigger than your panic.
Mm.
Don't try to pretend that the fear is not there. I know we see people showing up on social media brilliantly and boldly, and we just assume that they're never scared of anything. That's not true. They just don't broadcast it. So you feel like because you don't see others showing up fearfully, then there must be something wrong with you. No, that's not true. That is a very real human emotion. So don't try to pretend it's not there and don't feel like you have to hide it or suppress it because you don't see others broadcasting it. It's there. Give it a name. Speak it out loud. I'm afraid I'll fail. I'm afraid they'll judge me. I'm afraid it won't work. And then shrink the size of the action. We keep talking about tiny steps. Again, you don't have to change your entire life, your entire career, your entire business in a day, in a week, in a month. Just change what you will do in the next 5 minutes. One email, one phone call, one word on the page, one yes to yourself. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the next step. We've heard that and seen that before. As a professional speaker, I mean, if I don't get booked, I don't get paid. And so I have to tell myself, and I saw this somewhere, maybe in one of my business groups that I'm a member of. It was like, who are you going to reach out today? And who are you going to prospect for? I mean, how many emails are you going to send out? You don't have to send 500 out in a day, even if I just send one. And then commit before you are ready. You see, confidence is a consequence, not a prerequisite. People get that wrong all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They think the confidence comes first. No, it's a consequence of you showing up and taking action. You earn confidence through action. So stop waiting to feel ready. You will feel ready after you start moving. I like telling people when they ask, Bridget, where does your confidence come from? And I will quickly say, it is because I've always shown up a certain way. It's speaking like and looking like I deserve to be in that space, whether it was a third grade classroom, whether it was a band recital, whatever it was, I always had the body language that suggested I should have been there. Half the time, I don't know what I'm doing, right? But it's that consistent commitment that I am going to do this. And then rinse and repeat. Yes, you are going to get tired. Yes, you will mess up. But do not confuse a stumble with a stop. You see, our late pastor, Reverend Alexis Thomas, used to say, a rejection is just a redirection. Okay. So somebody gives you a no. No, no, no. That just means it's an abbreviation. It's an acronym for next opportunity. So don't confuse a bump in the road with a stop. Fall forward, get up fast, and most importantly, do not quit just because it is not perfect. There are people out there who are crushing it, who are killing it with half the talent you have in your pinky finger.
Mhm.
Fear is loud, but it is not in charge. Action is your vote. Action is your momentum. And when you vote for your future over your fear, even with the shaky, sweaty hands and the wobbly knees and the stomach that's doing all these weird things, even when that happens, you win. So when you are afraid to take action and you're afraid to keep going, do it scared, do it small, but above all, do it.
Wow, that's very powerful. I think the that's the first time I've heard that confidence is a consequence of action and those things. Because I think a lot of times we go into things, like you say, we stumble. We're actually the only one that knows we stumbled, but 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 we and nobody else knows it. So a lot of times we doubt ourselves when we there's no need to. Like you said, we are who we are. We're unique, and however we come across is who we are, is what we do. It shouldn't be prescribed to someone else or the way somebody else does it. And I think that's what hangs a lot of us up, is that we're trying to imitate or be like somebody else, or somebody else that, like you said, like it shows up on social media that's successful, and we're thinking, well, if we're not like that, then we're not successful. But and me and David, you know, um, recognize some of that even on our podcast. That this is 100 and something, 70 something episodes, and we may not have a huge following and all that, but we're still in a high percentage of podcasters because we have been so consistent with this. So again, we don't have the flashy numbers as some of the bigger names, but again, we're showing up, like you said, we're showing up every week. We're doing our podcast, and it's impacting people. So you're right. We had to look at it differently than, again, the fam and that we see out there and the glamour from everybody else. When we're just as good, just as talented, we're just in a different space right now.
Yeah, I loved your statement about not letting people dim your shine or dim your brightness. That I think is powerful. Tell them to put on some sunglasses, like you said. It's like Joe and I have experienced that in our careers, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, they didn't have sunglasses or didn't want to have sunglasses or whatever. And you have to adapt to those situations because sometimes it doesn't work. I understand what you're saying, and I believe in it. Go in there with your own boldness, and crush it, crush the moment with the power from within, and that will definitely give you confidence when you're there. And to Joe's point, no one knows when you skipped a word or stuttered or said something wrong. My stutters are intentional. My skips, my ahs and ums, are intentional. I try to get like 50 of them every minute. I don't, but they're there. So, I take ownership for them. And it's just, God, be yourself. Be yourself. Be who you want to be.
People you want to be remembered for when you think of what it is you want people to attach to your name. What is the phrase? What is the word? What is the idea that when it crosses people's minds, it's synonymous with your name? And then live that phrase, live that word, live it out loud.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, no, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I think some people get stuck on that step, on and they get caught up in the minutia of making decisions. To your point, they overanalyze. Joe and I overanalyzed starting the podcast for, I think, 6 months or something like that. And finally we just said, we're going to do it. And we've said this so many times. I think I've said it probably the last, I don't know, 20 episodes. The first two episodes will never see the light of day. We digitally shredded them and burned them in a fire pit. They were horrible. I mean, it's embarrassing to think of how horrible they are because we're thinking, oh, we're college instructors, we're college teachers, and we're fine up there, but we put a camera and a microphone in front of us, and all of a sudden we can't speak anymore. So yeah, that's when we stopped scripting because we don't script in the classroom. So something as small as that, once we ditched that piece of paper, that was our one little thing. It was so small. And then when we started talking, it's just like we were the hundreds of conversations that we've had for hours and hours, and it just, you realize that once you make that small decision, that little tweak, that minor adjustment, you can be amazed at how easy something that you thought was so hard becomes.
Dave, overthinking and overanalyzing and that analysis paralysis, overthinking is just fear wearing a lab coat. It makes you it makes you feel like you're doing something productive. I'm doing R&D, You're just stalling, okay? What what you do to shut it down and to start moving, set a deadline, give yourself a time limit. I've got 24 hours to decide on this. That's it. Because perfection is a moving target. And analysis paralysis is just procrastination in disguise. Get out of your head,
Yep.
get into action. You don't think your way to clarity, you act your way there. Make the phone call, send the email, again, post the message, delete the script, start messy, fix it later, just move. And then here's the other thing. People always think about what if it goes wrong? What if it flops? What if it doesn't work? What if it does work? I remember having a client where everything I threw out, oh, well, see, Bridget, you don't understand. Well, see, I tried that. Okay, well, try it again.
Try it my way this time.
I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe it'll work. Okay. And you've handled worse. Okay. If you're listening out there in podcast land, think about it. You've taken on worse. You can handle this.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it too. People don't recognize that they have overcome things. They've achieved things, and it's not until you do that deep reflection, take a look back at, oh wow, I did accomplish that. Oh, I did do that, and that, I think that gives you some confidence that, okay, I can do this. And I think that's kind of where me and Dave were. We were like, why are we having? We were looking at, okay, we got to get the right equipment. We got to do this. We got to do that. And finally, just say, you know what? Let's just do it. And that's how it happened. And like you said, we haven't looked back since. But it took a lot of that. We were wearing that lab coat for a long time. Like you said, 6 months. We were walking around bumping each other with those lab coats. So
And it wasn't cute. It
and it
wasn't.
wasn't.
You know,
Right.
our our 5-year-old son, 5-year-old son, he just finished fifth grade. I guess that's why the number 5 is in my head. But our 11-year-old son, terrific student, incredibly bright, sharp, AB honor roll. He missed all A's by 2 points. He had an 88. 2 points. And so all summer long, he's going to hear from me, 2%. You just try 2% harder, right? He's going to hear that. He's going to be so sick of it. But he'll come home with a project or come home with some kind of an assignment. And he is just all up in arms. Oh, I can't do that. This is impossible. You don't understand. And so I will ask, has it been done before? He'll give me that look like, what is that supposed to mean? Has it been done before? Well, yeah, probably. Okay, well, you can do it too. So for the new business you're wanting to launch, the new podcast, the new website, the new product offering, the new service, has it been done before? Have other people offered new services, launched new businesses, branched out, written a book, uh, delivered a presentation? Has it been done before? Yeah. So you can do it too, and probably better.
Yeah.
Take off the lab coat. Y'all are listening. Take off the lab coat.
I'm gonna laugh at that
We've
every
got about
time.
2 minutes left. So, Bridget, what are your final thoughts for our audience regarding breaking the pattern? What do you want them to walk away with?
I want them to walk away with knowing they are absolute rock stars. They are bold, they are empowered. You are not stuck. You are just scared, and that is okay. Fear is human, but staying stuck, that is a choice. You do not have to have it all figured out. You do not need perfect timing, perfect confidence, perfect conditions. You need a decision, a tiny step, a moment of courage that says, I am not doing this old dance anymore. I'm breaking the pattern. Besides, you're dancing with two left feet right now. So quit that. Because the life you want, the purpose you crave, the freedom, the fulfillment, the fire, it's on the other side of one simple thing, movement. So here's your call to action. Stop waiting, stop stalling, stop replaying the same excuses dressed up as strategy. Take the step, make the move, break the pattern, and then repeat that new pattern until it becomes your new normal.
Wow, that's a powerful that's a powerful ending right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's no way I could follow that. I mean, those are words of encouragement for me as well. So thank you for that. Thank you for being on the podcast and sharing that with us, because again, I definitely, sounded like some of that stuff was directed towards me. So, uh, I am definitely going to make some small moves that are going to turn into big moves. So thanks for sharing that. And,
But to like sitting out in the congregation and you feel like the
absolutely.
pastor, right, is talking
That's
directly
exactly
to
how I
you.
felt. I mean, I almost wanted to turn around like, okay, this is me she's talking to. So again, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you both for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And thank you, Bridget, for taking time out of your day to indulge us with your insight and definitely you made us laugh a lot, and that is always a good thing. So it was so much fun. Thanks again. We want to thank our audience for joining us for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. If you'd like to reach out to Bridget, you'll find her contact information in the description. I'm sure she'd be happy to hear from you. And with that, we want you to keep on being your not so ordinary you.